So crafting in Season 4 is a lot easier than people realize, and it's probably just because they're too afraid to click one of the buttons. And that's okay, because that was me for like the first 3 days. I literally didn't craft a single item or temper a single item because I didn't want to waste my materials or anything like that. But it turns out it doesn't matter because you get such an abundance of materials. We can do this on every single piece almost always. Let's talk about this. The very first thing that I want to tackle is literally that. It's scarcity, which is non-existent. So if I picked, I'm just going to choose one of these random items from my inventory. We'll probably do these Juggernaut pants. There's nothing great about them. It doesn't matter. This is just an example piece of gear. You put this into the thing, and then there's obviously a couple options, and I'm going to talk about what each one of these things means in just a moment. But like you click one, you do something, and it turns out the material cost, like I only have one character and it's not even 100 yet, but my one character has farmed enough materials for quick math, beep, boop, beep. I can do this like 100 times. And in reality, you can only do this maybe 6 per item. That should tell you everything you need to know about the whole saving your materials or the scarcity of it. It's not difficult. The actual difficult part is gold, and we'll get to that in the masterworking section. All right, so now let's talk about what you can put on what pieces of gear and why. When you put a piece of gear in here, there are 6 options for you to choose from, and they look like this. Each one of them is going to do something different for your class. For example, I play a sorcerer, so I have all these different augments that tailored to a sorcerer. So if I click on frost augments, for example, it's going to give me a chance to do one of the following and within a range of one of the following. We want frost augment. Well, what can that go on? Now we see in our inventory over here what that could possibly go on, and it looks like it's just weapons, whether it's 2-hand, 1-hand, or offhand. So we put just a random weapon in there. The stats on this are not going to change. The only thing that's going to happen is when I hit this temper item button, boop, boop, a little animation plays, and then anyone that plays a frozen orb sorcerer would probably nut all over this because this is like one of the most desired tempers, I believe. So obviously it shows you the chance that it can happen, and then when you look at the item, no stats have changed, but a new stat line has been added. Now, there are 2 options here. One, I can re-roll that one stat. I can go back to frost augments, and then I can do it again. But if you notice down here, I can only temper this piece of loot 5 more times. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how many fucking fingers I'm supposed to hold up there. So we click on this to consume 1 more of our tempering things, and it's almost like hit points on items from last epoch. This time I got one of the best things that you can roll for an ice shard sorcerer. I would love it if I got something for my own goddamn character. But now when you look at the item, it's got a chance for ice shards to cast twice, which is totally fine. That's great and everything. Something I didn't know and nobody told me, and I don't know if it's very obvious for everybody right now, is what about the rest of those tempering slots? Well, as it turns out, I can add a second stat line to this piece of gear. So instead of going for weapons, if I click on offensive, what I now have here is a whole different segment of options to choose from. And because we're built based on frost, if we look at the frost finesse, it's going to offer us anything between cold damage, frozen enemy damage, vulnerable, blizzard damage, ice spike damage, and obviously I'm a blizzard sorcerer, so I try to go for ice spike damage on all of my gear. But for the sake of this video, now we're an ice shard sorcerer, so obviously I want something, whether it's vulnerable or just straight cold damage. And now right here, it's going to say it's going to fill slot 2 out of 2, and I click temper item, skip the little animation, and what we got was vulnerable damage. That's a fucking big deal for ice shard sorcerers. So like right away, without wanting to re-roll this, I just rolled exactly what I would want on an ice shard sorcerer. This is absolutely insane. Now for both of these stat lines, it's important to pay attention to how many times you can temper these items, because if you don't roll what you want and you sit there and keep trying to do it, it's straight up a gamble. You can 100% lock out an item and have some dog shit roll that you just didn't want on that item. Now as we transition into masterworking, the great kicker to this is that you cannot masterwork an item, and I'll show you what that looks like on screen. You cannot masterwork an item unless it's a unique or it's fully tempered. Fully tempered doesn't mean you consume all of its temper slots like I thought it did. But this staff right here, I can retemper a few things just a couple more times. How many more? I have 4 more tempering on this one, but that doesn't matter because it's fully tempered, meaning both slots are now taken up. So if I go to the Masterworking tab, you can see almost everything kind of fades away on my character or in my inventory, except for the items that are fully tempered. So let's take that Giga Chad staff that we already have been using and put that in here. The material cost for this stuff is very, very interesting. And I'm going to take a screenshot. I'm going to have it up on the screen wherever my face isn't, and I'll have that up kind of the entire time that I'm talking about this so you get a good idea of what's going on here. Because it really just takes regular materials like iron chunks and veiled crystals. That's totally fine. But it also takes this crafting material, which you get from doing the pit, and you unlock the pit after doing, I think, a level 45 nightmare dungeon, and you can get these as early as tier 1. Now, the way masterworking works, as you can see from the chart over here, it's going to give you a rundown of what it does each level. There's 12 levels that you can level up a piece of gear. It's extremely similar to the old old way of crafting in Diablo 4. Meaning the original version of Diablo 4, you could craft something, I think it was up to like 5 times, and it was just enhancing it more and more and more and more. And that's the exact same idea here with Masterworking, except there's 12 tiers for it, and there's a kicker. Every time you hit level, I believe it's 4, 8, and 12, you can roll one of the stats on there to be 25% better than it already was. So naturally on this one, I would like either damage or vulnerable damage. That would be amazing. Or even the chance to, well, not the chance to restore primary resource, that doesn't matter, but I would want vulnerable damage or just raw damage to go up on this one. But every upgrade in between there increases all stats on that item by 5%. So take a look here. If I do this, this is doing 50% damage and 120% vulnerable damage. And it also has its crowd control enemies damage that it does. And I hit, boom. Now this thing has been masterworked. And I look at it now, the crowd control damage has, I don't even know if that one went up. I wasn't paying attention to that one, but the damage and the vulnerable damage and everything else on here has now gone up by 5%. And that pretty much summarizes how you can do the masterworking part of this. Again, once you get up to either 4, 8, or 12, it's going to cost a lot of gold and a lot of materials, but you improve one of the stat lines on there by 25%. So you can make some insane gear. So if you think for any reason you've hit this rut or you're stuck and you're just kind of not really progressing as far as you want to, dial the scale back a little bit, get back in the pit, start farming that pit material that you need to upgrade your gear, and start adding that stat bonus to everything you own. And if you haven't already, you need to make sure you go back to tempering and hit any one of your items that doesn't have 1 or 2 stat lines on it and add it. It's extremely cheap. You get these materials from literally everywhere, and it's insanely beneficial to do this. Doing all this crafting stuff and really paying attention to the masterworking and getting all of your gear up is literally the difference of you farming like a level 25 nightmare dungeon or farming a tier 100 pit and selling Uber runs to all of your friends and family and everybody. This was intended to be a very good rundown or an overview of everything that's going on. There's going to be a few more advanced tactics and things that I'll probably release here in a week or two once we all kind of discover that a little bit more and it gets more out in the playing field. And then there's another thing that we got to talk about, which is these sparks that are kind of insane. I actually haven't even farmed any yet. I've been kind of busy being a dad this week, but those are going to blow your mind if you don't already know what those do, because I just learned that shit like yesterday. Now, if there's anything that you want to add to this video or this subject, throw it in the comments down below. On your way down there, be sure to like and subscribe because they're free and they really help out the channel here. And then if you want to, what I do plan on doing, dude, these guys' swords are sick. Sorry, if you want to, I do stream once in a while here on YouTube, probably once, twice, 3 times a week. My schedule just opened up a little bit, so I can stream a little bit more. And the best way to stay on top of when that's going to happen is by joining our Discord and paying attention to the announcements tab in there, because I definitely plan on hosting a lot more events, whether that's leveling a bunch of people's alts via the Helltide stuff that we've been doing, or giving out free Uber runs, or carrying people through the pit if I need to, or anything like that. It's the best way to stay in touch and kind of see what's going on, so make sure you do that. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and if you're bored, YouTube's going to recommend this next one for you. Happy grinding, travelers, and we'll see you in Sanctuary.